repetition of what you've already heard. But what I want to try to do is point out the major points in this case, in Sgt. West's case. First of all, he was a sergeant. He'd been there 14 years. He knew that he had a duty to report anything, let alone something as significant as what was alleged by Selim. He would have you believe, in presenting his case, they would have you believe that Nina Hunter just gets to do whatever she wants at the jail, and Director Ford just looks the other way because she's the golden girl. And that's just wrong. And I think it's offensive to the people that work in that organization and the people in the supervisory positions in that organization to try to rely on this. Well, that's what she does all the time. Everybody knows it, but nobody's reported it as a defense to what he failed to report. He had a duty to report. He wants you to believe that Lieutenant McBride, and I'll ask you to rely on your own judgment of her testimony, has come in here today and lied to your faces about whether she was told about the licking incident and that Stella was upset. I submit to you that her testimony's been consistent. During the IA, she said the same thing. And I ask you to rely on your common sense to figure out why would she lie about that. She said, if Captain Hunter did it and I saw it, or if he told me she did it, I would have reported it. She wasn't trying to tell us that there's this code of silence or code of whatever they're trying to get you to believe in order to explain away the behavior in this case out at the jail. And like I said, I think that's offensive. Sgt. West had a duty to report and he didn't do it. When he was put under oath and asked the question, he said what he saw, no equivocation. Said he saw Captain Hunter lick the back of Stella's head. He gets asked again in the second interview when Captain Vanis is simply trying to follow up on allegations that have been made against him as to uses of force by Captain Hunter. He's trying to clear him or corroborate what she said. He's trying to get to the bottom, trying to get to the truth, as he told you. And he's asked again to tell what happened on the fourth, and he says again, saw her lick the back of his head. Clear as can be. And then he'd like you to believe that it's because he was taking pain medication that on February the 1st, he calls Captain Vanis out of the blue. He wasn't asked to call Captain Vanis. He reached out to him and said, and you've got his statements that we've submitted into evidence, but what I submit to you, I've taken right out of the Captain Vanis's testimony and his statement that he wrote, mind you, in close proximity to the time it happened. He wrote a memo on February the 4th that said, West had called him and said he never witnessed Hunter. I want to make it clear, I never saw her lick Stella. Well, you can imagine why that would cause a little bit of a upset, if you will, in this investigation, because now he's had Schneider change his testimony. West, who was considered to be a really strong witness, has now called up and said, not so fast. I didn't see her do it. So he goes to his house, he gives to give him his letter of internal, which, by the way, they're required to investigate by law under FDLE certification standards. If there's an allegation that someone's lied, they're required to investigate that. It's not a witch hunt. Let's go get West let's go get Schneider because they're the two witnesses against Captain Hunter. That's not how this works. It's a professional organization. So he goes to serve the notice, and what does West tell him? He says it again. Doesn't tell him I'm confused, I'm on meds, I'm in pain, I'm having issues. He doesn't tell him any of that. He just says, gotta make sure it's clear. I never told you. Well, I submit to you the reason that he decided to change his story about that was because he did have something at stake. He was in line for the next promotion. He already figured out his salary demand. It was on his jump drive that he was going to make when, not if, he got the promotion. So if you ask who had something at stake in this case to change their testimony and then go back and change it again, that would be Sgt. West, because at the point of February 1st, he realizes, made these statements now, then he calls Vanis and says, I'm not sure, I don't know why he did it. I don't know what he was hoping to prove. But then when he's called in and under oath again, he doesn't say, I didn't say that to Vanis on February 1st. He doesn't deny the phone call. He says, I don't remember saying those exact words. I do remember this, but I don't recall telling you exactly that I did not see her lick the back of his head. Well, as far as I'm concerned, that's a corroboration to what Captain Vanis testified to you. That's what he told him on the phone. And so he lied to a supervisor. He was either lying in his sworn testimony when he said he saw it, or he was lying to Captain Vanis when he said, I want to be clear, I never saw that. Your job is to under your rules, to determine whether the employee committed the acts alleged to be the cause for taking the disciplinary action in this case. Mr. West has been charged with, if you will, knowingly giving false statement to supervisors, other officials, or the public. And I submit to you, it's not just the false statement he gave to Vanis, not just the false statement he told Vanis on February the 1st, but it's also giving false testimony about Lieutenant McBride. He said in the internal affairs investigation of Hunter, not of himself. Now, this is the first interview he gave. He's not under any pressure at this point. He's just being asked, what did you see this day? And he says, oh yeah, I told Lieutenant McBride, because he knew he was supposed to. He knew he was supposed to report it. So he just thought, well, I'll just say I told Lieutenant McBride and that'll be the end of that. But the problem is Lieutenant McBride, when she was interviewed, said, no, he never told me that. That is something I would definitely remember. She would remember it because she knows she'd have to report it if she was told that a captain in the organization, that's a high-level position, had done something of that nature. So I submit to you that there is sufficient evidence to find that he knowingly gave false statements to his supervisors, other officials, or the public, and that he engaged in, it wasn't criminal conduct. We're not saying it's criminal, and I ask you to please read this directive because it's, or this rule, because it says criminal, dishonest, or other conduct which interferes with effective job performance or has an effective adverse effect on the efficiency of county service. I submit to you, there's evidence before you, he's a victim in an inmate battery. The state attorney's office is considering not filing or not going forward with the charge because his testimony, because he's been fired for being untruthful. That is a perfect and exact example of what Mr. Reckenwald was trying to tell you, why corrections officers have to be honest and truthful in everything they do. And it extends not only to criminal cases that are made against inmates, but it extends to, as I said earlier, if an inmate alleges that he used an excessive amount of force on him. Then he's going to have to testify, no, I didn't do that. And then it's going to be the inmate's word against his word. And what happens when you have a witness whose credibility has been questioned and challenged is you're left with a witness who's of no use to you. And that's exactly what happened in the Hunter case. That's why she was only disciplined, not only, but she did receive a suspension, because it was sustained that she had used some inappropriate language in the workplace. The investigation of Captain Vanis was thorough, and that's what he sustained. I submit to you that the evidence also supports that he failed to make the report. That's the 10209C. He failed to make a report of the, and he made inaccurate, misleading, contradictory, or improper during the internal affairs investigation. That's what that deals with. At the end of the day, you all have been very patient, and I know I don't think any of us expected it to take this long, but I ask you to consider what your role is in this, and what your job is here is to find whether or not the evidence before you sustains the violations. And then, if you find that it does, any one of them or all of them, your duty is to find or to determine whether or not the discipline conforms to the merit rules, whether there's any evidence in defense or mitigation or extenuation, and whether it was appropriate under the factual circumstances. The final thing I wanted to mention is it came up in the other cases with regards to progressive discipline, because it's clear that he doesn't have a bad record. He was a good employee for a long time. The dismissal section of the merit rules not only, it talks about dismissing an employee when all reasonable attempts at corrective action have been ineffectual, but then it says or, when the seriousness of and the circumstances surrounding the offense leave dismissal as the only feasible alternative. You've heard the testimony of Mr. Motes, Mr. Reckenwald, the numbers of people that have been fired in Volusia County because of giving untruthful statements, testimony, statements to supervisors. I didn't ask him this question, but I feel safe in saying the majority of those, if not all, were either firefighters, law enforcement officers, correctional officers, because of the higher burden that they're held to, because of the job that they do, and the fact that they're required to give sworn testimony as part of their job duties. So we would ask you to find at the end of the day that the findings are sustained in this case, and that termination was the only appropriate discipline. Thank you.
position is today is that there's this grand conspiracy at all. What I hope that you have gotten from our presentation through testimony and evidence and argument is that there, in fact, is an atmosphere at the jail, and specifically in regards to Captain Hunter. And that more than one person has backed that general atmosphere up. That's an atmosphere of horseplay that goes way beyond what is normal or acceptable. But that, by and large, people know about it, supervisors, and that it has not been acted on. Now, I don't know why that is, and I'm not putting forth a theory as to why that is. But what you heard today was that Sergeant Ben West is brutally honest. When he is lucid and when he is knowingly putting forth information, he's brutally honest. I recounted to you something that I myself witnessed, which was he was directly asked for why is it? Why is no one coming forward and talking about this behavior? And in the same room that Dr. Ford sat, he said, everybody just says, that's Dr. Ford's golden girl, and that's just the way it is, and you just look the other way, and that's just how she is. And it's just, and he said that with Dr. Ford in the room. And I remember being, as my client, I wanted to put masking tape over his mouth and say, what are you doing? But he's that honest. And he was that honest when he was under oath and when he was providing testimony about what he saw. We do not dispute in any form or fashion that there was a phone call made to Captain Vanis on February 1st. We don't dispute that. We don't dispute that in that phone call, Sergeant West expressed some level of doubt as to his testimony. Specifically what he said, he doesn't remember. You're going to go through these rules, and the first one that comes up is the term knowingly. Did he knowingly give false statements to a supervisor, other officials, or to the public? And you're in a predicament here, and I don't envy your position, because you have to decide with somewhat limited information, is it possible that given Sergeant West's mental, physical, chemical condition on February 1st, did he have the ability to form the requisite mental capacity to know what he was saying, to know the impact of what he was saying, to know that he was in fact recanting? Is it possible? That's what you're being asked. And is it likely? You heard testimony from his wife about his physical condition, his emotional condition, and in fact his medical condition with the medicines that he was on. If Sergeant West could do it all over again, there would never have been that phone call, right? Clearly. Because he comes back after that phone call, he is no longer confused, he is completely lucid, and he says, he's not even disputing that the phone call happened, because he's honest. He's not saying, I never made that phone call, prove it. No. I made the phone call. He's admitting that much. He just doesn't recall specifically what was said. And so, yes, at that point, you are going to weigh whether the testimony of Captain Vanis outweighs the testimony of Sergeant Ben West. I would ask you to remember the whole process from beginning to end and everything that you know about Sergeant Ben West and his career, relatively unblemished as it is. I know I read as part of when I was speaking to Captain Dennis, but it's important, so I want to read it to you again. There's a rule here concerning moral character, and it states, if the violation involving perjury or false statement is alleged to have occurred in the performance of regularly required work duties or in the course of an administrative or disciplinary investigation, a certified officer's failure to maintain good moral character, as defined in subsection 4 of this rule, shall not include a statement in which the officer making the statement conceded such statement to be false prior to the employing agency's conclusion of the internal affairs investigation. Sgt West made the call. He does come back and recant. He doesn't know specifically what he says, but he recants in reestablishing his prior testimony. He comes back and says, I don't know for sure what I said then, but let me be real clear. This is absolutely 100% what I saw, and this sticks. And that makes 3 times. Did the call complicate the process? Yes. Is there some level of disciplinary action that is appropriate? Yes, absolutely. And it would not be fair for us to say otherwise. But again, there's that sliding scale. And we submit to you that the county went all the way to termination without considering any of the mitigating factors. And the mitigating factors is, why did he place that call? Why did he take the initiative to put himself in a position that he wasn't in? That's not the actions of a reasonable man. That's not the actions of a lucid man. He wasn't in trouble. And he put himself there. And I ask you to consider, why would he do that? Also, it's been brought up that because of this, that somehow Sgt West, and he is no use as a witness, his integrity is blown out of the water. And I submit to you that that's not true either. Witnesses, all the time, have weaknesses, have something that has to be overcome, something that has to be explained. No witness is 100% perfect. There is always something that's not quite right. You take the totality of what they bring to the table, and you determine if they are credible. All of it. And I suggest to you that if you look at the totality of everything that you know about Sgt. Ben West and everything that he contributed to the investigation of Captain Nina Hunter, even at great personal sacrifice to him, because I think you can all appreciate that he was not in a good position, having to be honest about the behavior of his immediate supervisor. Not an easy position, but he did it anyway. If you take all of that, I hope that you find that clearly, can't call it otherwise, there have been some violations, okay? But they do not rise to the level of termination if you consider the mitigating factors.
Clarify one thing, because I don't want to be confused. The rule that it's not a Volusia County Merit Rule regulation, that's a rule from the Florida statute, or from the administrative code that has to do with FDLE and the certification, the licensing of a correctional officer. When they're looking at whether or not a correctional officer or law enforcement officer, if their license should be suspended or pulled, that's the definition of moral character for that purpose, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So I just didn't want the board to be confused that she was reading the merit rule, because it wasn't.
Any last thoughts? The risk of muddying the I forgot to ask you a question. Did you ever see a tongue on the back of the head?
Yes, I did, sir.
Okay.
It was close from me to this.
But they were sideways, you saw that happen?
Yeah, because I was sitting there helping to resolve the case. I was helping him do the paperwork.
All right, I don't want to go back into it too much, I just wanted to not wake up tonight wondering that. Okay, we're gonna bring the fact-finding portion of this hearing to a close then, and proceed into deliberation by the board. At this point, Brenda will take over. No, she won't. Okay, would anybody like to weigh in with some general thoughts? I think all of the reminders from both sides have been good, in some action. One addition comment I would make is that we're not bound to, beyond a reasonable doubt, criteria in our decisions. So we do take under consideration for what it's worth for under hearsay testimony and just a preponderance of the evidence as we see it. So, that said, I'm open to comments from the board.
My only comment, it seems that we're talking so much, I guess this has to be a comment because we kind of heard all the witnesses. My comment is, where is Selma and where is Captain Hunter? I mean,
Cell's right here, sir.
why aren't they why weren't they called to testify?
Well, I'm just not supposed to talk.
I mean, I haven't heard anything from the people who all of this was about. So I guess that's covered.
Well, no, I think you could, if you have concerns about that, express them in that way rather than try to pin somebody for not how they presented their case, because that's, I struggle with that too. We're supposed to let them present their case to a large degree.
Right, but I mean, so it seems it would be much easier if I had I mean, if we had heard from the supposed victims.
Nancy Allen said that Hunter received suspension, something, 5-day suspension.
Not for this stuff, for something else,
Related.
something related, but not
Yeah,
directly.
for what she was accused of.
For foul language,
Captain Hunter and
But not
Mr. Stone,
for-
were they subpoenaed for
not
this?
for the head part.
No, she didn't receive anything from that because they couldn't prove it.
And the way I understand sexual harassment rules is you don't have to touch somebody. I mean, it can be just simulating something or other, or a suggestion, or an off-call remark.
It could be words, that was not action.
So I'm sort of troubled by the fact that they don't think that they can make a case because somebody says they didn't see something. If the guy, if it's that close, and they think that it was, could have been, or probably was, and the guy thinks he was harassed, or it would be the same thing if a woman thought she was harassed. That carries some weight to me.
So, that being absent,
Yeah, that,
what we have here is whether somebody knowingly lied. And the lying came not on an oath, but in a phone call. Suppose because under oath, the man said, I think the same thing each time, but in between, outside of that, in the phone call, then the doubt came in his mind. Is that how, well, that's how I understand it anyway. Okay. And so, having said that, if he said the same thing in the front, and that's and the same thing in the back, and we're told that what's said not on the oath is not a part, then where does that leave me in my thoughts and in my process in trying to decide whether this county has proved its case?
well, I think you probably agree that our expectation that he would be truthful to his supervising to a superior officer, whether he was under oath or not. But in this case, he was obviously not, specifically under oath. And probably everybody wishes he had not had that spontaneous outburst, whatever.
Which is his supervisor meaning,
Well, anybody of superior rank, or is the way I understood the explanation by the county.
oh, okay.
That could be Louis on the
Yes.
work.
It was Captain McBride, but she wasn't his supervisor, I don't think.
No, I didn't hear anybody that was a supervisor here.
We just saw her walk past her.
Well, okay, I see what you're talking about. Okay. Well, the facts are so interrelated with other hearings and other potential motives that I think we need to be careful to stick to what was on our plate here today and not try to read too much into what was presented. Because I think we've run down too many rabbit trails like that. Let's take these one at a time and see what we can make of it. We're all on the same page, Sgt West this time, okay, at the top of the page, Volusia County Merit Rules 86-453, 12, knowingly giving false statements to his supervisor, other officials, or the public. What say we on that?
Oh, there we go.
I think knowingly is the operative word there. I think that there's so many facets to this case, and the problem I have with all of this, can I just discuss for a minute?
Absolutely.
The problem that I have with all of this is, well, a couple of things. When Lieutenant McBride got on the stand, she was asked very specific questions, and she was firm in her testimony, but she was also very specific. I mean, she exuded confidence. She was very sure that Sgt West had not in any way mentioned to her about this incident. And I commend him. I think that he has a good record. I heard about his awards, and I thought, wow, that is great. We need people like that. But then when Lieutenant McBride got on the stand, it bothered me that she was so specific and so precise, and when she answered, she sculpted her words, because she wanted to tell the truth. That's the impression that I got. So that part of all of this bothers me, because either she's lying or he's lying. I mean, it can't be both. Either he said it to her or he didn't. And that part of this case bothers me. He's also been, excuse me, in the department quite a few years, 14 years, I think, something like that. I don't remember exactly. And so he knows he has to report. And I understand he was taking the gentleman to the hospital. But she was so firm in her statement that I believed her. I believed Lieutenant McBride. It was the way she came across, how she sculpted her words, how specific she was. So that's a problem that I have. And then all this about the paperwork. He didn't follow, he did. That was very confusing to me. I do understand, though, that when you take medication, I see it, that you absolutely could become confused, disoriented, I'm not sure what I'm doing, that he made that phone call, he wasn't sure what he's, I agree with that part of it. I'm not sure, in my mind, and maybe somebody on this line can help me, what exactly, I know he was confused because of the medication, but what prompted him to make that phone call? The fact that he was, the impression I'm getting, and maybe I'm wrong, if I am, correct me, The fact that he was, even in his confused state, he was sitting at home, he was thinking about this. But then we also have a statement that he was thinking about retaliation. I mean, he was in a hard position. Absolutely. Anytime you have to report your supervisor, are you kidding me? I would have had second thoughts about that too. And then I heard testimony about retaliation and there is protection. I think that's good. But the thought that came to my mind is, because if I was Sergeant West, I would think of this, retaliation. What about peer pressure? And will I be accepted again with my coworkers, or how long will it take me to get back in that circle if I do this? It's just a thought that ran through my head. I'm not saying it ran through his, I'm saying if I was Sergeant West. So I think there are parts of this case for which he has to be commended. But I also think I have questions in my mind about this. Lieutenant McBride I believed her. I did. And if I believed her, then that meant, and I say this respectfully, that Sergeant West was not telling the truth. And if he's not telling the truth in that incident, that puts a feeling of doubt in me for other places.
Well, if I may say, that's why the county is taking the position that truthfulness is such an important
It is.
aspect.
It
That's
is.
exactly what it does.
It is. And I know we're talking, I just wanted to explain my thought process here. And I know that this first merit rule talks about knowingly giving false statements. And I go back to what I originally said when I started my diatribe, that knowingly, I think, is the operative word there.
Well, that is what we're left with at the end of the day, is whether we think it was known.
I have been quiet,
Wow.
and it doesn't happen very often. What I can't get past the idea that these people were set up to fail. The whole thing is regrettable. I feel like they were set up to fail in that the person who caused all of this walked off with a 5-day suspension for using salty language. And now at this point, we want to take the next guy lower on the totem pole, the guy that's not a senior management guy, and we want to hang him out to dry for something that he really had nothing to do with. He was afraid of being, he was afraid of this exact thing happening to him. This was exactly what he was trying to avoid. And I think he was set up to fail. And I firmly believe that. I really have a hard time with the person who caused all this walking away scot-free, even though she got a 5-day suspension. We're talking about ending the man's 14-year career out of fear of retribution. I think he was set up to fail.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's fair, or what's unfair. Life's generally unfair.
We've been looking at motivations, what would the county have to gain by setting them up to fail? Because this blows holes in what they're doing.
I'm not certain what the motivation is. Why is Captain Hunter getting a 5-day suspension and a walk? And this man who is out working for a living, this man works for a living. And he's gonna take the fall over something that he had no control over the start of it. I feel, just feel that it's patently unfair. And it may be against the merit rules, you know? What he did is against the merit rules, but I feel like he was set up to fail. And I feel like what's happened to him is unfair. May not be, my feeling may not be right, but what I'm thinking is that is a just thought. It is a just thought.
Well, I think it's important to be able to talk about that in a public forum like this, and maybe somebody else will have just thought about it, happen. I'm sure it will. I'm gonna drill back down on this first thing, knowingly giving false statements to your supervisor, other officials, or to the public. This is where we earn our money, guys. I'm just kidding, nobody gets paid on this. This is where it comes down to the rubber meeting the road. We need to come up with a consensus whether or not we think the county has proven that violation.
Are you asking for a motion?
I am.
Is it best to just put it on the floor and ask the question? And then take the vote? So
That's fine with me.
In this right here,
Where are we at?
that,
You wanna start somewhere else? We don't have to start at the top.
well, no, I just make a motion that we, I make a motion that the county did not prove that there were false statements given to a supervisor or other officials in the county.
Second.
How's that doing?
Now we can talk about it some more. Comes down to knowingly and pretty
Now,
much.
since I,
It does come down to that.
since I said it, since I made the motion, the reason is that it's three interviews? No, it's 2 interviews, and 1 off the record interview. So, off the record is supposed to be off the record, so I'm just gonna go with the 2. And therefore, I don't believe that the county proved me that was a false statement. And also, I believe that other witnesses could have done something, could have testified, could have shed more light. So, or more information could have shed more light, so that means they didn't prove it, so I believe they didn't prove it. Okay.
Okay, can you repeat on that again? What you just-
Absolutely not. I
I need that.
I can state the,
State the motion.
Yes. The motion is, the county has not proven that Sergeant West
Knowing,
knowingly gave false statements to the supervisor or other officials of the public, in our opinion. I added that in our opinion, but that's what it is.
Okay.
We have a second?
So I second that motion.
Further discussion?
now, my further discussion was not a part of the motion.
I understand that, yes.
It's just a-
That would have been the world's longest motion.
So, now we can vote if there's no.
All right, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries unanimously. Let's move on to second, Bruce County Merit Rules 86-453, subsection 8. Criminal, dishonest, or other conduct which interferes with effective job performance or has an adverse effect on the efficiency of county service. Well, I'll just start. I don't think anything criminal happened here. And I don't know that I've been convinced that there was anything dishonest that happened here. I think there was a period of confusion, and in fact, he could take it back, I think he would here in the middle. Or other conduct. These catch-alls are troublesome to some extent. But this is an important thing, because an adverse effect on the efficiency of county service. This whole truthfulness thing is extremely important, and I don't discount this at puts everybody in a bind if they cannot with confidence say that their employees are honest. Or else they'll face something like this.
I wonder, I wonder why we did not hear from Captain Hunter. I wonder why we did not hear from Captain Hunter's victim. I think had we heard from those people, kind of what Azelle said, then we would know what the truth was. And I'm uncertain why these people couldn't have been subpoenaed. I mean, that's not my job, but I would think when you're trying to tell this story, whether you are taking the county's position or taking the appellant's position, that we would get the people who could give us the most information about what occurred. And I can't quite understand why we did not hear from those people.
Well, to some extent, it's not even about the act.
No, it's not.
It's trying to cover up our investigation, cover up, never cleared up. It's like the old saw, it's never the crime is to cover up. I'm not saying this is that, but.
Well, to get it out, I will make another motion. If you don't mind.
Yes, sir.
I might not have a job tonight. I make a motion that we rule that we do not see any criminal dishonesty or the criminal dishonest or other conduct which interferes with effective job performance or has an adverse effect on the efficiency of county-based services.
That was a clear, concise motion.
I'll second that motion.
Shut up.
I second that motion.
All right, further discussion on that one?
Or, I'm sorry, the county hasn't proven to us that there was.
Well, I don't think there's anything criminal. I'm still hung up on the dishonesty and the other conduct which interferes, because somebody in this room lied today. And that bothers me.
It should.
Yes, and especially when this whole thing is about veracity. These people, these workers are so important, and they are held to a higher standard. And because of that higher standard, they have to be without question. And I have a question in my mind, so I'm gonna vote against that one.
My only comment on that, give somebody maybe a little bit of mental wiggle room. If
Okay?
I don't want to believe that somebody had to lie. There could have been a lack of clarity in memory of this. If he had a throwaway line, they asked you, clipped it on the head, he's ticked off, or he used something a little more colorful. Maybe she didn't hear it, maybe, it is a he said, she said case.
It is, but this gentleman, Sgt West, was also put in a tenuous situation. I mean, I feel sorry for him that he was backed into this corner with having to report his supervisor, thinking about retaliation. It bothers me. All of it bothers me.
Well, let me add one other comment. If I was discussing this one, the county has made the case that they didn't follow through on some of these allegations because it ended up being a he said, she said situation, and therefore they didn't follow through with the punishing.
They couldn't follow through because the two witnesses changed their testimony. It's what the county is elected.
And I also think that they did do a thorough investigation. I mean, I know it was stated that there were 80 employees or something like that. Well, you wouldn't interview all of them are not relevant, and sometimes it's better to do more with less, because you get more accurate. Too many people muddy the water, is what I'm trying to say.
I understand that completely. Sometimes
So I-
too many of these can muddy the water.
Yes, these waters here are very muddy. I mean, I have admiration for this gentleman with his record, and it is bothering me to say these things, but this is an open forum, and I have to bring all of it out. I'm not trying to delay, I know we've been here long enough, but in good conscience, I just wanted to say this,
I appreciate that very much.
and I'm done.
Further discussion on the motion on the table?
What is the motion?
The motion is that the county did not prove to us that he committed the offenses in the second allegation. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign.
Aye.
Chair rules the motion has passed with 20%. Moving on to the next section, Portage County Division of Corrections Policy and Procedure 102.9. C, all staff shall make or cause to be made accurate, complete, and truthful reports and official records. 1, no staff member shall knowingly make or cause to be made any false report or falsify any official record. 2, no staff member shall make or cause to be made any inaccurate, misleading, contradictory, or improper record/official record.
What my question is on this one, maybe I'm too tired even, and what is the official record that they're saying is falsifying? Most of it's been verbal.
Well, these interviews are definitely part of the official record.
Okay.
And I think there's probably some inclusion in this about,
Phone call.
and maybe some of the medical records not being filed properly or timely or whatever.
Is the phone call an official record?
No, I don't know.
I don't know.
He was not sworn
He was
to
not sworn and is not known.
Unless it was taped with the knowledge of both parties, I would say no.
Question.
That's why I keep saying that 1 and 3 and 2 is, because it was.
So maybe the phone call wasn't an official record, but yet we have heard today that these people are held to a higher standard, whether they are on or off the record.
He admitted the phone call, but he said he didn't always see it. Or he didn't admit, everything what he said, I'm sorry. And then it wasn't, it should not have been a part of the official record because
I also think the phone call, he had taken medication. And that is a point that I don't want to forget.
Would anybody like to make a motion besides Giselle?
no, I'm done.
He's maxed out.
I'm done.
I'm not supposed to make a motion from the chair. But I'm on the gavel.
If there's so much, I mean, if we're that much in doubt, that tells you that.
I think it's illustrative as well. Well,
Because I don't think we hold our tongue back, when you make a motion, when you say it, so.
well, I'll hold Robert's rules in advance here and make a motion then that we find that the county has not proven this offense to be upheld. It sounds like I say, county has not proven the actions justify the violation of this policy as quoted.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion on this? We've pretty well been around the barn on this.
I think so.
Hearing other discussion, no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion, say aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Number two, Volusia County Division of Corrections General Post Orders Number 3, enforce all rules, regulations, and policies of the division. It is the responsibility of all employees to report violation of institutional rules specified in division policies and procedures, administrative corrections, and post orders. Well, we should count on that coming through all the time, but
This is such a general thing, and it references policies and procedures, administrative directives, and post orders, which we don't have, which we don't know anything about.
yeah, I think everybody in there is aware of sexual harassment.
Yeah.
It's like whoever said about pornography, I don't know if I can define it, but I know when I see it.
Yeah.
You know, I have a hard time, I mean, licking somebody's head to me is not a sexual act. If it is, it's like from another world. To me, it's just
kind
bizarre.
of stupid. It's unhygienic.
It is just bizarre to me. I've never, like I said, I've never seen it. I've never even heard of it, so I have a hard
But
time
it was a
with it.
part of an established sexual harassment policy. And it's not, I mean, it's not, and if it was done, it's proven it's done, then it's wrong, whether we think it is or not.
It's not done in polite company.
Yeah, it's not important if we consider it to be sexual
Yeah.
harassment in the county. If this fellow was known to be